Offset just got shot, and what's coming out right now is so shocking, so unexpected, that people are starting to question everything they thought they knew about this situation. Because this isn't just about a fight outside a casino anymore. This is turning into something much darker, something that may have been building behind the scenes for months. And at the center of it all, Cardi B. Because according to explosive new rumors circulating online, Cardi may have just exposed something that completely flips the story upside down. Something involving Stefon and alleged intentions that nobody saw coming. We're talking about leaked messages, insider whispers, and a timeline that suddenly doesn't feel like a coincidence anymore. What if this wasn't random? What if Offset wasn't just in the wrong place at the wrong time? What if there was something bigger happening, something planned? And the scariest part? Some people believe Cardi B knew pieces of this long before the shooting ever happened. But if that's true, why didn't she say anything sooner? And what exactly did she see that has everyone panicking right now? Because trust me, this story is about to take a turn you won't see coming. To really understand why this situation has people on edge right now, you have to go back to the beginning, before the rumors, before the shooting, before the name started getting dragged into something far more serious than anyone expected. At one point, Cardi B and Offset weren't just a couple, they were a brand. Every appearance, every performance, every moment they shared felt larger than life. They had the kind of relationship that people either admired or constantly questioned, but no one could ignore. From red carpets to viral moments, they were always in the spotlight. But behind that spotlight, things were slowly falling apart. The cheating rumors didn't just come once and disappear. They kept resurfacing, each time louder, messier, and harder to ignore. And every time Cardi tried to move forward, something new would come out that pulled everything back into chaos. People close to the situation started saying that trust between them wasn't just damaged, it was completely broken. And when trust is gone, everything else starts collapsing with it. By the time Cardi finally stepped away, it wasn't just another celebrity breakup. It felt final, emotional, like something had been pushed past its limit. She wasn't just walking away from a relationship. She was walking away from years of tension, betrayal, and public pressure that never seemed to stop. But what happened next is where things started getting complicated. Because not long after the split, Cardi was suddenly being linked to Stefon. At first, people brushed it off. Just rumors. Just speculation. But then came the sightings. The outings. The photos that started circulating online. It didn't take long before it became clear this wasn't just a rumor anymore. And that's when everything shifted. Because while Cardi seemed to be moving forward, building something new, and reclaiming her peace, Offset wasn't. Sources began quietly saying that he was watching everything unfold. Every post, every headline, every moment Cardi and Diggs were seen together. And according to those same sources, it wasn't just bothering him. It was affecting him in a way that people around him hadn't seen before. At first, it showed up in small ways. Cryptic messages, subtle posts, comments that didn't directly name anyone but clearly had meaning behind them. But then those messages started changing. They became more intense, more emotional, and eventually more concerning. One insider claimed that Offset began speaking about the situation in a way that didn't just sound hurt. It sounded personal. Like he wasn't just reacting to what was happening, but holding on to something deeper. Something unresolved. And that's when the energy around everything started to feel different. Because it wasn't just relationship drama anymore. It started to feel like something was building under the surface. Then came the first wave of rumors that really made people stop and pay attention. There were whispers that Offset had been trying to find out more about Cardi's new relationship. Not just casually, but in detail. Where she was going, who she was with, what her plans were. At the time, most people didn't take it seriously. They brushed it off as jealousy, as curiosity, as something normal after a breakup.
But now
those same rumors are being looked at in a completely different light. Because when you connect those early whispers to what's happening now, it starts to feel less like coincidence and more like a pattern. And the more people dig into that pattern, the more uncomfortable the story becomes. Because if this really has been building for months, if there were signs that something wasn't right, then the question becomes impossible to ignore. Was all of this just emotional fallout from a messy breakup? Or was something much more serious already in motion, long before that night outside the casino? And if that's the case, then what else did people miss before it was too late? Everything changed the night Offset was shot. What started as a normal evening quickly turned into chaos that nobody saw coming. According to early reports, it all went down outside a packed casino. Lights flashing, people moving in and out, energy high, nothing out of the ordinary until suddenly, everything spiraled. Witnesses say there was tension in the air before anything even happened. Voices raised. A confrontation that didn't look like it was going to end peacefully. And then, in a matter of seconds, everything exploded. Gunshots. Panic. People running in every direction. And right in the middle of it all, Offset. At first, the narrative seemed simple. A fight got out of control. The kind of situation that happens when emotions run high and egos clash. That's what early reports suggested. That's what most people believed in those first few hours. But then the footage surfaced. A shaky video started circulating online, showing Offset in a heated argument just moments before the shooting. You could see the tension, the aggression, the kind of energy that felt like it was about to turn into something worse at any second. And that's when the internet did what it always does. It started digging. People weren't just watching the clip, they were analyzing it, slowing it down, zooming in, trying to figure out exactly who was there, what was said, and what led to that moment. But while everyone was focused on the fight itself, something else started happening behind the scenes. Old rumors began resurfacing. Posts from months ago were suddenly being shared again. Comments that didn't seem important at the time were now being re-examined, like they held hidden meaning. And slowly, a different narrative started forming. Because some people weren't convinced this was random. They started asking deeper questions. What if this wasn't just about what happened that night? What if the real story started long before that? And that's when things took a serious turn. Alleged messages began circulating online, unverified, but spreading fast. These messages didn't talk about a fight. They didn't sound emotional or reactive. They sounded calculated, planned. The kind of language that made people stop and read twice. Phrases like, "he's moving too comfortable," and "it's only a matter of time," started appearing in these screenshots. And while nothing was confirmed, the tone alone was enough to make people uneasy. Because it didn't sound like anger. It sounded like intention. And then Cardi B's name got pulled back into the conversation in a way nobody expected. People began connecting those alleged messages to things she had said in the past. Statements about feeling unsafe, about being watched, about someone trying to gather information about her life. At the time, those comments didn't fully make sense. But now they felt like warnings. And suddenly, people weren't just looking at the shooting, they were looking at everything that came before it. But the real twist, the moment that shifted everything, came when a new piece of content surfaced. An alleged audio recording. In the clip, a voice could be heard speaking in a low, serious tone. Not joking. Not emotional. Focused. Controlled. The kind of tone that made it hard to dismiss. The words weren't fully clear, but the message was. It sounded like someone talking about what they would do if they caught someone slipping. And within hours, social media did what it does best. It picked a name. Stefon Diggs. No confirmation. No official statement. Just speculation spreading like wildfire. But here's what made it even more intense. People started saying Cardi B had already seen or heard things like this before. That she had been aware of certain behavior long before the public ever caught on. And if that's true, then this changes everything. Because it means this wasn't just a random moment that got out of control. It might have been something that had been building quietly, right in front of everyone, and nobody realized how serious it was until it was too late. The moment that alleged recording hit the internet, everything spiraled out of control. What started as speculation instantly turned into a full-blown digital investigation. People weren't just watching anymore, they were connecting dots, building timelines, and digging through months of content like they were trying to solve something much bigger than a celebrity scandal. And the deeper they dug, the more unsettling things started to look. Because suddenly, old clips of Cardi B began resurfacing. Not the loud, viral moments everyone's used to, but quieter ones. Interviews, lives, Short statements that didn't seem important at the time.
But now?
Now people were listening to them differently. In one resurfaced clip, Cardi talked about feeling like someone was constantly trying to get information about her life. At the time, it sounded vague, easy to ignore. But paired with everything happening now, it felt specific, targeted, intentional. And that's when the internet started asking a new question. Was Cardi trying to warn people without actually exposing anything? Because if she was, then that changes how this entire situation is being viewed. But things didn't stop there. Within hours, more alleged screenshots began circulating. These ones were even more intense. Conversations that hinted at movements, locations, and timing. Again, nothing confirmed, but the language was enough to send people into a frenzy. Words like, "he won't expect it," and "just wait till the right moment" were being screenshotted, reposted, and debated across every platform. And once again, the same name kept getting pulled into the center of it all. Stefon Diggs. Now here's where things took an even darker turn. A supposed insider, someone claiming to be close to the situation, dropped a statement anonymously on a forum that quickly went viral. According to them, Cardi B didn't just accidentally expose something. She had been holding on to information, watching, waiting, trying to figure out what to do with it. The insider claimed that Cardi had seen behavior that made her uncomfortable months ago, but instead of going public, she chose to stay quiet to avoid escalating things. But something changed. And whatever changed led to this moment. Because according to that same source, some of the information that's now leaking was never meant to be seen by the public. Which raises a serious question. If this was supposed to stay hidden, then how did it get out? And more importantly, who leaked it? Because if Cardi didn't release it herself, then someone else did. And that means there's another player in this situation that nobody is talking about yet. Meanwhile, the pressure online kept building. Fans weren't just reacting, they were picking sides. Some believed Cardi had been trying to protect herself and others all along. Others believed this was all being blown out of proportion. But one thing everyone agreed on? Something about this didn't feel random anymore. It felt connected. Too many coincidences. Too many resurfaced moments. Too many alleged leaks that somehow lined up perfectly with what just happened. And then came another twist that made everything even more intense. A theory started gaining traction that the night of the shooting wasn't just bad timing. It was the moment something finally went wrong. Because if these alleged conversations about timing and waiting were real, then people started asking something much more disturbing. Was that night supposed to happen differently? Was something planned that didn't go the way it was supposed to? And if that's true, then Offset being shot might not be the full story. It might just be the part that went public. Because now, the biggest question isn't just what happened outside that casino. It's what was supposed to happen, and why it didn't go according to plan. At this point, the situation wasn't just trending, it was completely taking over the internet. Every platform, every timeline, every comment section, everyone was talking about it. And the more people talked, the more divided things became. Because now, it wasn't just about what happened. It was about what people believed happened. One side of the internet was convinced this entire situation was being blown out of proportion. They argued that this was nothing more than a chaotic night that turned violent, and the rest was just speculation fueled by rumors and unverified leaks. But the other side? They weren't buying that explanation at all.
They pointed to the timeline.
The resurfaced clips, the alleged messages, the recording. They argued that there were just too many pieces lining up for this to be random. And that's when things got loud. Hashtags started trending within hours. Threads with millions of views broke down every second of the situation. People were creating full timelines, connecting events from months ago to what just happened, trying to show that this wasn't coincidence, it was build-up. One viral post read, "Y'all really think this just happened out of nowhere? Go back and look at everything Cardi been saying." Another said, "If even half of these leaks are real, this situation is way bigger than a fight." And then came the reactions from inside the industry. Not direct statements, not confirmations, but subtle posts that only made things more intense. One artist posted, "Truth always comes out no matter how long it takes." Another dropped a cryptic line, "Some people don't move off emotion, they move off timing." Those posts didn't name anyone, but they didn't have to, because people immediately started connecting them to the situation. And that only added fuel to the fire. Meanwhile, major media outlets began covering the story from different angles. Some focused strictly on the shooting itself, sticking to confirmed facts. Others leaned into the online speculation, highlighting the alleged leaks and the growing theories connecting everything together. And with each new article, the narrative kept shifting, because no one version of the story felt complete. There were too many gaps, too many unanswered questions. And then there was Cardi B, completely silent. No posts,
No tweets.
no live sessions, nothing. For someone who has never been afraid to speak her mind, that silence stood out more than anything else happening. Some people believed she was staying quiet for legal reasons. Others believed she was letting everything unfold on its own because she knew something the public didn't. But the longer she stayed silent, the more people started to believe one thing. That silence wasn't random. It meant something. At the same time, attention started shifting towards Stefon Diggs. Because while Cardi was silent, he was completely off the radar. No response, no denial, no acknowledgement of anything being said. And in a situation where his name was being mentioned over and over again, that silence started raising eyebrows. Some fans defended him, saying there was no real evidence tying him to anything. Others questioned why he hadn't spoken up at all, because in the middle of all this noise, his absence felt loud. And just when it seemed like things couldn't get more divided, a new wave of reactions hit. Former insiders, anonymous accounts, and self-proclaimed sources began posting their own takes, claiming they had information that hadn't been made public yet. Some said there were more recordings. Others claimed there were people involved who hadn't been named yet. And suddenly, the conversation shifted again. Because now it wasn't just about what had already surfaced. It was about what might still be coming. And that possibility, that there's more out there waiting to be revealed, has everyone watching this situation closer than ever. Because if what we've seen so far is already this intense, then what happens when the next piece drops? And more importantly, who does it implicate next? Just when it felt like the situation couldn't get any more intense, something new surfaced that completely shifted the narrative again. And this time, it wasn't just another rumor. It was a detail that made people stop and rethink everything. According to a new anonymous source claiming direct knowledge of that night, Offset may not have been the only person being watched before the incident happened. Let that sink in. Because if that claim holds any truth at all, then this wasn't just about one target. The source alleged that there were multiple movements being tracked in the days leading up to the shooting. Not publicly, not obviously, but quietly. The kind of tracking that wouldn't raise suspicion unless you already knew what to look for. And suddenly, the timeline started looking even more disturbing, because people began revisiting everything again, but this time with a different lens. Not just focusing on Offset, but on everyone around him, who was with him that night, who knew he would be there, who else was moving in the same spaces leading up to that moment. And that's when a chilling theory started gaining traction. What if the shooting we saw wasn't the full plan? What if something else was supposed to happen, and something went wrong? Because if the alleged messages about timing and waiting were real, then it raises a question that's hard to ignore. Was that moment outside the casino supposed to play out differently? Was Offset the intended outcome, or just part of something bigger? And here's where it gets even more unsettling. Another claim started circulating that night, that there may have been a second individual who left the scene before authorities fully secured the area. No name, no confirmation, just a detail that refuses to go away. Because if someone else was there and hasn't been identified yet, then what role did they play? And why haven't we heard anything about them? Now connect that back to everything else. The alleged recordings, the resurfaced messages, the warnings people now believe Cardi B may have been hinting at, and the silence from everyone directly involved. It starts to feel like we're only seeing pieces of a much larger puzzle. Pieces that don't fully make sense yet, but somehow still fit together in a way that feels too precise to ignore. And maybe that's the most unsettling part of all. Not what we know, but what we don't. Because right now, there are still questions that haven't been answered. Who actually pulled the trigger? Why hasn't that person been clearly identified? And why does it feel like certain details are being held back? Some people believe the story is already at its peak, but others? They're convinced this is just the beginning, that more leaks are coming, more recordings, more information that could completely change how this situation is understood. And if that happens, then everything we think we know right now might not even matter, because the next reveal could flip this entire story on its head all over again. Now I need you to really think about everything we just broke down, because this situation is far from simple, and the truth might be a lot deeper than what we're seeing on the surface. Do you honestly believe this was just a random incident that the internet turned into something bigger? Or do you think there's actually something going on behind the scenes that hasn't fully come out yet? And the biggest question everyone is asking right now, do you think Cardi be exposed something she wasn't supposed to? Or is this all just speculation that somehow started lining up a little too perfectly? I wanted to go down to the comments right now and tell me exactly what you think, because this is one of those stories where every opinion matters and the debate is only getting louder. If you made it this far, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Because if new evidence drops, and let's be real, it probably will, you're not going to want to miss it. This story is still unfolding, and the next update might change everything all over again.